Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 183rd installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Matos Maseh. Again, another double parsha. Everyone's going to be in the same place after the Shabbos, meaning in the land of Israel and outside the land. So there are certain times, as we mentioned before, that you double up Torah portions in order to finish the entire Torah within a year, and then we celebrate on Simchas Torah, right? We celebrate with finishing the Torah and start again from the beginning of the book of Genesis. Parshas Matos talks about vows and oaths, the battle against Midian, and Moshe Rabbeinu rebukes the officers with laws of kosher utensils, division of the spoils, quest of Reuven and Gad. We're going to see that. I think we're going to speak about it in Parshas Maseh, the summation of the journey, where they went from this place to that place to another place, etc. We spoke about that once, the boundaries of the land of Israel, etc. So the Torah tells me, chapter 32, verse 18, right? Chapter 32, book of Numbers, verse 18. The tribe of Reuven and Gad say, "We shall not return to our homes, to the children of Israel will have inherited every man his inheritance." Verse 19, "We shall not inherit them across the Jordan and beyond, for our inheritance come to us on the east bank of the Jordan." Interesting enough, the Jewish people going to go into the land of Israel, and Reuven and Gad got a lot of good property, and they didn't want to go in. Right? They wanted to stay where they are and not be part of the distribution when it comes to coming into the land. So there's an obvious question, why is that? Right? That we're going to see. Rashi says later in verse 24, he says that Bnei Gad, the children of Gad and Reuven, got more, they got a lot of property, tremendous amount of property, more than seemingly they wanted or they desired, but they got a lot, right? God, the way it was going to be divvied up, they got a lot of property. So Moshe Rabbeinu only asked them to join the war and then go into the land, right? He wanted them to join like everybody else. They should be part of this war, that they're going to fight against the Midianites, and then they're going to go into the land of Israel. Because he says to them, let us conquer the land, and then, we'll conquer the Midianites, then we'll go into the land. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed to go in the land, everyone else seemingly is going to go in the land. Moshe Rabbeinu not allowed to. But he tells them, let's go, right? Let's go to war, because he knows that if he fights the Midianites, defeats the Midianites, he's going to die. Doesn't matter, he goes straight away, goes to war against them. And he says, let's fight. Let's fight against them and you inherit the land. And what did they add? What did they say? They said that they wanted to stay where they were, by the Jordan, right, by the plains of the Jordan. And they didn't want to leave their homes until the entire Jewish people conquer the land. Meaning another 14 years it's going to take them to conquer and divide the land. They're not willing to go. They don't want to go and be part of it. They'll wait till the end in order to come. So says Mori Rebbe, Arav Agona Moshe Shlita, should be well. He brings down in his commentary in Tam Vadas, right, on Chumash, and he says it's a pella. It's a wonder over here that they chose to stay where they were, separate from their families. Everyone else seemingly is going to go to war. They're going to go into the land. Okay, they're going to have to destroy the nations, 7 nations in the land. But they said, you know what? We'll stay where we are. We're good. Plenty of property, whatever. We'll wait. Seemingly they're going to wait 14 years. But what do they claim? They'll wait. They'll wait till we go in. They'll wait till you go in, you conquer the land, and then we'll come in. Tremendous amount of time. Now, really, it wasn't going to be 14 years, and seemingly it's going to be less than that, right? But they're going to separate. They're going to separate from their families for 7 years, right? Seemingly 7 years. Not necessarily 14, but 7 years. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Come, let us go to war, and you guys stay here." So it's a little bit funny. They don't want to go with everybody else. There's a promise they'll go into the land. Okay, they have to take out the nations of the land also. Fine, but they're going to get the land. They have a big portion here. So why not? Why aren't they going in? Now you have to understand that the plains of the Jordan, what we call Avar Yarden, had a certain level, had holiness like Eretz Yisrael. It had holiness like the land of Israel itself. And you're chayiv in mitzvahs. You're obligated in mitzvahs in the plains of the Jordan. We'll call it, well, as it's called, Avar Yarden. That's how I refer to it. So a person who takes fruits and vegetables from the Avar Yarden has to take Meiser. Has to take Truma, has to take Meiser. Right? Why? Because it's like the land of Israel itself. So if it's like the land of Israel itself, okay, it has holiness. Right? It's got the status like the land of Israel. So maybe you understand they don't want to go. Okay, it still has the status of the land of Israel. Why should I run? I'll come at the end. But it didn't have the full-fledged holiness until all of Eretz Yisrael is conquered. It has the status of the land of Israel when it comes to tithes, Truma, and Meiser, but it doesn't have the full-fledged status as if the entire land is sanctified. Right? In other words, if the entire land of Israel is sanctified, that will not have the status until they wipe out the nations. So they said, okay, we'll have the holiness here, we'll stay here, and we'll wait. We'll wait till you conquer the land. Because even though Moshe Rabbeinu takes them, right, they're by the Avar Yarden, and they're going to wipe out the king Sichon and Og, nonetheless, he still has the desire to go in. He still wants to have that holiness of going into the land, even though he's not allowed to. But the problem is, they really wanted to go in as well, but only partial Avar Yarden. In other words, that the Avar Yarden itself did not have the full-fledged status of the land of Israel. Did not have the holiness of the land of Israel. It did in certain aspects, right? We mentioned by tithing, fruits and vegetables, but didn't have the full status, right? Didn't have the full status because the land of Israel is not conquered, right? It's not fully conquered. If it's not fully conquered, that's the only time they want to go in. Right? So the Avar Yarden doesn't have the full-fledged status until Yeshua is going to go in the land, sanctify the land. So even though Eretz Yisrael is holy, it's still got a little bit of holiness, even though the whole land hasn't been conquered, etc. Avar Yarden wasn't as great. Didn't have that same level of Kiddush, of holiness, as the land of Israel. Right? Until they go into the land, conquer the land, then that's something else. But at this point, it's not going to be that way. So what happens? They say, we don't want to go. We don't want to go until it has that full-fledged status. It comes along B'nai Gad and B'nai Ruvain. Right? It comes along the tribes of Gad and Ruvain. And they say, no, we're not willing to leave. until all of Eretz Israel is conquered and until it's split up. Why? Because they want to establish the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Israel, of living in the land. But where they are right now, it will have the status of Eretz Israel. It's just not full-fledged status right now. They want the full-fledged status. They want to be the true Zionists. Right? That's what they want. They want to wait until the entire land is conquered. And they're not willing to leave. So it's an interesting thing. Eivor Yarden is like the land of Israel. Thing is, it doesn't have all the holiness like the land itself. Even though they're obligated in Truma Meiser, right? Even though they're going to be obligated in mitzvah that dependent on the land, right? Taking tithes, Shemitah, sabbatical year, all that. They wanted the full-fledged thing. They wanted the full holiness. This is only partial. But they had a desire. It wasn't like, oh, we'll just stay here, we're not interested in fighting and going in. They wanted the real status of Eretz Yisrael. They didn't want a partial status, even though partial status is also important. Right? No question. You're taking Truma Maisa. Right? You're taking tithes. You're observing the sabbatical year. Right? Those things are only dependent on the land. Not dependent on anything else. So, but they even though they're going to observe that, they still want the whole thing. They still want the whole thing, and they want to establish the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Right? The mitzvah of living in the land. So that's what I want to speak about. What's the mitzvah to live in the land of Israel? So the difference of opinion between the Ramban, Nachmanides, and the Rambam. In Maimonides, what the mitzvah is. Right? According to one, it's a mitzvah chiyuvis. It's an obligation. All Jews should live in the land. And if you don't live in the land, you transgress. You transgress a positive command to live in the land. The other opinion is it's a mitzvah kiyumis. What's a mitzvah kiyumis? A mitzvah kiyumis means that it's a mitzvah only when I can do it. There are certain things, certain reasons why a person is not obligated to live in the land of Israel. One of them, he's got a good parnasa. He's got good livelihood. Right? That's not an easy thing to give up. Right? To go live in the land of Israel, even though it's a tremendous mitzvah. Could be learn Torah. Another reason he's going to learn Torah better. He's got good study partners. He's got good rabbanim. He's got good rabbis there. Doesn't know what he's going to have in the land of Israel. Right? Could be his parents are there, and he can't leave them. There are a number of reasons why a person may not get to the land of Israel. Now, the Chofetz Chaim tried to come, couldn't come. The Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah Vilna wanted to come. He saw there were impediments. He didn't come. A lot of great people never made it to the land. Even though in recent times the land's is now in the hands of the Jewish people. 2,000 years it wasn't. So good people were exempt. They didn't have to come. They weren't able to. But now it's easy to come, in theory. Right? Relatively easy. Get on a plane. Right? Very easy to come. So, the mitzvah to live here is if you're able to sustain yourself. Like my Rebbe says, one of the criteria of coming here is you have to make a pilot trip and see how you're going to make parnasa. Right? See how you're going to make a living. It's one of the more expensive places to live, certainly. And the person has to figure out how they're going to live. Right? The joke is, how do you make $1 million living in the land of Israel? Answer, you bring $2 million with you. Not easy. Right? It's very expensive to live here. Now, even though you say health insurance is minimal cost, you don't have to have a car, right, depending where you are. Public transportation is very good. Okay, so you don't have a car expense. Food expenses are high, right? Rent is probably the same, right? Or if you own, you have mortgage or whatever. But you make less money. You make a lot less money than you would make, let's say in the States. But in the States, you have more expenses. You have to have a car, right? You have a house. You have expenses there. House or apartment. Schooling tuition is very expensive. Here it's minimal. But again, you're making less money. So, to come here and live here, also you have to understand the land of extremes. One thing is that it's black and white. Most ultra-Orthodox communities, person wears a white shirt, right? If you're a guy, black pants with or without stripes, dark gray, dark blue, that's about it. Right, with a black hat. You want to be Hasidic, you want to be Sephardic, whatever. But it's almost either you're that, you're not religious, or maybe you'll be a religious Zionist. And even if you're a religious Zionist, there are some very strong communities. For the religious Zionists, they don't dress white and black, right? Blue shirts or yellow shirts or whatever, or maybe a little more colorful. They won't wear a hat. They may wear a knitted yarmulke, whatever it is. And you have those type of communities, but there aren't so many. So the bottom line is just like any strong place in New York or New Jersey. If you don't toe the line, you won't fit in. If you've never lived in a Jewish community, it's very hard here. Right? I'm not trying to discourage, I just want to point out the reality. Someone wants to convert, very hard here. Much easier to convert in the States or somewhere else and then come here. Because otherwise then, you have to have a work permit, figure out how you're going to stay here, right? Because according to the chief rabbinate, you have to have your visa. Your visa cannot expire, otherwise they won't deal with you. And they're the only game in town, right? You have to convert through them. But if you've never lived in a Jewish community, it's a little bit extreme here. I think, in certain places, New York and New Jersey, no different. I wouldn't tell people to live there either. Right? If they're in the process of conversion. Unless you're holding there. If you're holding there, it's one thing. When people say, don't you believe it's the best place to live spiritually? Yeah. I don't think there's any question about it. At the same time, it's not an easy place to live. And you have to toe the line. Wherever you go, whatever that community standard is, you have to do it. You have to hold by it. You have to keep it. Because if you don't, you get spit out. All right, that's just the reality. So my Rebbe says, name of his father, that it's better to be a Jew outside of Israel wanting to live in the land than a Jew living in the land wanting to live outside of Israel. Right now, there's a lot of truth to that because you think you're missing out. You can make more money, you can live more lavishly, you can have an easier life, you don't have to worry about the Arabs, right? You don't have to worry about that. Right? There are a lot of things that seemingly are easier to do than living in Israel. Spiritually speaking, though, I'm not saying these other places, these other strong places, anything to sneeze at. Definitely not. Not the same as learning in the land of Israel. That I don't think is any question. I'm living proof that if I would have been anywhere else, I wouldn't be half the person I am today. Just by living here, hanging out with the people I've hung out with over the years, learned under the best of the best. That I don't think there's any, I don't think there's any question. But I want to make sure people understand one fundamental thing about the mitzvah of living in the land. The mitzvah of living in the land is not the only mitzvah in the Torah. People think, not everybody, but there are people that are ultra-Zionistic. If they want to be, that's okay. But that's not the only mitzvah in the Torah. And if you're not going to live according to what the Torah says, then you will be spit out. I don't mean thrown out necessarily, but you're going to have a very rough time. My Rebbe says that for a person to live here for a person to live here that is not worried about the Arabs. He's not worried about Iran. Right? He's not worried about any of these things. What he's worried about? He's worried about Jews in the land of Israel that don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't keep the Torah, the mitzvahs the way they should. And if that's the case, and a person is not going to live in the land and uphold the holiness of the land, better not to live here. Now, if you tell me a person's going to mess around outside the land, also bad. Right? No question. But if you're doing it in the palace of the king, and you're not doing what God wants, I'm not saying where you occasionally make mistakes, you do things you shouldn't do, whatever. I'm talking about you're not interested. You're interested in living in the land, but not for the sake of mitzvahs. You're living in the land because it's a Jewish state, not because it's has to be in God's backyard. Right? Not that it's all about Torah mitzvahs. Because if a person thinks like that, and you come here, and you do not uphold your end of the covenant, the ramifications will be horrific. So a person can't say, it's the mitzvah, the only mitzvah. Right? Someone said, in order to convert, you got to be a religious Zionist. You got to kiss the Israeli flag. Where does it say that anywhere? Even if you don't live in the land. That's Zionism gone bad. Person might be an Orthodox Jew, maybe an Orthodox rabbi. I don't care what he is. You walk into any rabbinical court, no one in their right mind is going to tell you kiss the Israeli flag or you don't convert. Right? They may ask you, do you know that's a mitzvah in the Torah? Right? About living in the land. About going back to the land of Israel when the Messiah comes. But they're going to ask you to kiss the flag. That's kind of absurd. Right? Certainly not brought down anywhere, but that's exactly what I want to point out. That some people will say it's the mitzvah in the Torah. Right? And, the ultra Orthodox will never say that. Because living in the land to them is about spirituality. Right? Not about kissing the flag. It has nothing to do with kissing the flag. It's about bringing out the spirituality. A religious Zionist may be religious also. Not going to say they're not religious. But at the same time, they may emphasize this mitzvah more than any other mitzvah. They may go far to say that living in the land is so huge, it's such a big mitzvah, it's also a mitzvah to do the army. Right? Now, that's a little bit of a stretch. If there's already a difference of opinion to live in the land, whether it's an obligation or if I can do it, very big stretch to say there's another mitzvah doing the army. Right? You want to say it's a subcategory or something like that. But in the end, there's always been a standing army amongst the Jewish people. There had to be a standing army. It's true. Today they don't need people in the army. They got a surplus. They may say not that way. They don't need people. Regardless, they make it up to be the end-to-end all mitzvah. If you don't do it, you're shirking your responsibility. If they look at all these Orthodox Jews that don't serve in the army, I don't know, let's say there are 6.5 million Jews here. So I don't know what the numbers are. Right? What the numbers of people eligible to serve. So even if you tell me 50,000 don't, or 70,000 don't, out of a couple million, 10%, 20%. Let's go back to 10%. Let's say it's 10%. 10% of the population. People are always going to serve. It's not a question. It's just a very volatile issue. Why? Because people say, why is my kid could die and your kid won't? Or they can also get an exemption if they want. We're living in the land. Divine protection comes through learning Torah. So you always need you need a standing army. You need people to sit and learn. And you don't want people in the army. They're gonna have to pray. Whatever. They have separate units. There are separate units for ultra Orthodox Jews. They want to be in it. They definitely have. But in the end, I'll tell you how far this goes. Why am I mentioning this? People can bury me, for saying this. Because someone came along, told me when I was part of a religious Zionist yeshiva, and I went to the ultra Orthodox camp. And this rabbi, quote unquote, said, I don't care where you go as long as it's Zionistic. That was his answer. You're going to learn good, fine, as long as it's a Zionistic place. Okay. He's entitled to his opinion. I'll tell you what he said further. And he said, I hope it's important to you to do the army. I was young then. So I asked him like this. I said, I have enough money. I can sit and learn for years. Not going to have an issue. Little did I know. Not going to have an issue. So I said, I have the opportunity to go through Shas. Finish the entire Talmud. So I said, you want to tell me while I'm learning I should stop learning and do the army and then continue? This person said, yes, that's what I believe. Now I want to show you why that's heretical. It's heretical for one very simple reason. You want to tell me the army is important, and if you don't do it, you're shirking your responsibility. Okay, we can discuss. But you want to tell me it's more important than learning Torah? Nobody. Not the greatest rabbi of the generation is going to tell you that. Because there is nothing more important than learning Torah. That's universal. That no one disputes. So why did this quote-unquote rabbi tell me that it's more important to do the army than to learn Torah? Because his mind is messed up. Because what he's saying is, this is more important than any other mitzvah in the Torah. It's not a mitzvah. Maybe you tell me it's subcategory of the mitzvah of living in the land. Maybe it's a stretch. Big time stretch. But even if I would cut you some slack, I'm in a good mood. I'll cut you some slack. What about the fact that learning Torah is more important than anything else? So anyone who tells you that's more important than learning Torah, they're lying. If there's a war, right, it's a war everyone's obligated to go to, what we call a milchemes mitzvah, then you stop learning, everybody goes. Even a person's newly married, everybody goes. We're not living in that type of world. You need a standing army, I agree. The war against the Arabs is not that type of war. So anyone who wants to be a Zionist, you want to wave the flag, you want to do the army, you're entitled to that opinion. But do not ever say that that's the most important mitzvah in the Torah. It's a mitzvah. And if I don't live in the land of Israel, you don't get the mitzvah. And if I live in the land and I don't do the army, what am I, a loser? Transgress a negative command, a positive command of living in the land? Who says? On top of that, someone wants to claim that that's more important than learning Torah itself? Go ask yourself the question. Is that person a lunatic? It's a lunatic. There is nothing more important than learning Torah. That's universal. So I mentioned before, some people, I'm not going to say everybody, certainly not everybody, some people get carried away with this mitzvah. And they get so carried away, they say it's more important than anything else. Where do you see that in the Torah? You see the land, and like someone once asked me, how do you know the end goal? The end goal is to live in the land of Israel for Jews. Well, Torah tells me many times. It's the most important thing. Right? The land of Israel. Jewish people. In the land. Beis HaMikdash. Right? With the temple. All that. Torah tells me many times. Clear as day. Read the Bible from cover to cover. Clear as day. And if I don't get there, or I can't get there, under onus, okay. You didn't do the mitzvah. Some people make it out to be that it's the only mitzvah. It's the only mitzvah. It's more important than any other mitzvah. It's even more important than learning Torah. Again, be careful who you listen to. That is 100% heresy. Somebody like that, if he wrote any commentaries, whatever, you burn his books. The person said a lot worse than that. I'm being generous over here. Right? One statement this person learned. This person said. I could go into other things. That's not my job. So, I understand the tribes of Reuven and Gad. They don't want to enter the land until the land is fully established. Till the holiness is fully there. But it seems kind of funny. In a certain way. Because they're going to miss out. They're going to miss out going to war. They're going to miss out with their families. But that's their desire to live in the land when it's, when it's ready. When it's ready for the holiness. That's why some people won't come to the land. And they hold it's forbidden to build up the land until the Messiah comes. Seen from the verses in the Torah, not like that. But okay. They're entitled to that opinion. But we're certainly not living in a Torah state. Desecration of Shabbos left and right. Secular people had it their way. There wouldn't be any semblance of a Jewish state at all. Right? Wouldn't be anything. Go to Tel Aviv, go to Jerusalem. You see the difference. Big difference. So they had that desire to want to live in a land established the mitzvah the greatest way possible. What's the greatest way possible? When everyone enters the land, they kill off the nations. Then they get imbibed, imbued, whatever the word is, with all that holiness. That's an amazing thing. They said, we'll wait. We'll wait 7 years. Wait 14 years, however long it's going to take. We are 100% willing to wait because we want the full thing. We don't want a half-baked. So you say, so people living in the land today is only half-baked? Maybe. Maybe because we don't have the Messiah. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash. Right? We're living in the land without that. I mean, it's very easy to see that we're not where we're supposed to be. Right? In the land, no question. The way it's being run. Nonetheless, they can still have the desire to want to be there when it's at its most potent state. And when is that going to be? That's going to be when the Messiah comes. That's going to be when we're bringing sacrifices. That's going to be when we have a Beis HaMikdash. Before that, okay, it's not as great. But didn't you say right now, even if there's no temple and all that, that's the greatest place to live spiritually? I agree, it is. But it's not for everybody. Because if a person doesn't come here prepared and know what in the world they're getting themselves into, it's better not to come. Right? Especially if a person can make a living easier, can still learn Torah, right? Live in a strong Jewish community, better off. Person says, I don't care, it's what I want to do. I'm going to come, be as it is, right? Whatever it is. I had someone who came here, wife converted, took him a long time, was on probation, was the whole story. And I kept telling him, better go to the States, stay there for a couple years, convert, then come. Never lived in a Jewish community. And when he came, I told them, if they come, I will pray 3 times a day. You don't mess up yourself, your wife, or your kids. And the person said, I don't care what I want to do. I've been in the States for many years, blah, blah, blah. Okay. They came here. What happened? A very difficult time. Many different things. So his response back to me was, you told me it was going to be hard. You didn't tell me it was going to be this hard. I said, of course I did. I said, I cursed you many times in 3 languages. You didn't listen in either case. He says, well, don't you think I'm better off being here than where I was? 100%. Right, that there's no question. You got to be ready. You got to be prepared. And if you're not prepared, you could suffer like a dog here. So anyone who wants to come, check it out. See if that's really who you are and where you fit in. And if it doesn't become a reality, it's not the end of the world. Because in my language, you're probably better off outside the land anyway. And if you bring kids past the age of 9, you kill them. Because a lot of stories of kids going sour, today because parents brought them too late. They don't fit in. They don't fit in language-wise, high school-wise, whatever. It's a disaster. So, does that mean a person can't do it? I'm not saying not. What I'm saying is you got to know all the facts. And then you got to weigh it very well. And you got to think about it. And you got to see if you could fit in here. Or see if your kids, whatever. And it's a land of extremes. You got the greatest amount of holiness, got a lot of impurity as well. Holiness is very, very powerful. Very, very strong. The thing is that you got to dress a certain way. You got to do things a certain way. And if you don't, in my language, it's game over. You won't stay here. You won't be able to stay here. Your kids won't fit in. It'll be too hard in many different ways. So, coming to the land, living in the land is a big mitzvah. But it's only a big mitzvah for those that can handle it. It's hard. I can't tell you I've had an easy time. I met incredible people. Learned under, big rabbinic scholars. Has it been easy? I'm not here because it's easy. I'm here to grab the holiness. But you have to be a vessel to be able to do it, and not everyone can do that. So I want to remind everyone, I have a class, Duties of the Heart, every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time. We're in the Gate of Humility, speaking on how to acquire humility. I do 2 Q&As every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. I have a class on the Book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 o'clock New York time, 4 o'clock Israel time. And those classes, the Q&As, and the Book of Leviticus are on my Facebook fan page. At Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. I do a Tanakh Talk once a week. That's on Monday. That's on Monday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. And that's on controversial issues. And I have class in Pirkei Avos, that's Ethics of Our Fathers, 2:30 Eastern Time Saturday, which is after Shabbos for me. Anyone wanting any information on any of these classes, plus my conversion classes, you can find me on Facebook, as we mentioned, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.